Hi everyone, and Kate here for the second of the Betsy Tacy 2019 videos. And in this video, I will be talking to you about Betsy and Tacy Go Over the Big Hill and Betsy and Tacy Go Downtown. I am really looking forward to discussing these with you, particularly Betsy and Tacy Go Downtown, which I have heard from a lot of Betsy Tacy fans that it is their favorite in the childhood years of this series, and it's definitely my favorite now too. So I was very happy to revisit these novels, and they definitely lived up to their memory, which I was a little bit nervous that they wouldn't, but they definitely did. And Betsy and Tacy Go Over the Big Hill, there is a really special element of the plot, and that is that, as the title says, they go over the big hill with Tib. For some reason, Tib isn't included in the titles, but Tib is there, and there's a big hill behind Betsy and Tacy's house, or behind Tacy's house rather. Anyhow, they've journeyed up the hill, but not all the way. And one day, while they're wandering, they happen upon this community of refugees from Syria. And the community is called Little Syria. It's a group of Syrian Christians who had fled Syria to have religious freedom, and their children all attend the Catholic school in town, and that's why these girls hadn't interacted with them, because they go to the public school in town. But they end up befriending one of the girls who's a resident of the community, Nafi. They kind of happen upon her one day, and it's just a really special element that these little girls who are from this kind of homogenous community end up happening upon this girl whose life has been so different from theirs, but she's still a little girl just like they are, and they learn how to have fun together and how to play together. And I don't think I want to spoil the ending, but there's just a really special thing that happens with Nafi. So it's really interesting to see this really, like I said, homogenous community, then to have this group of immigrants who do live kind of separately from the community, but through these girls, there is a way that they're kind of brought closer to being, feeling like they're a part of the community. It's a really neat part of the plot, and it's just really special. Another thing that's fun about Betsy and Tacy Go Over the Big Hill is that at the time, when this is set, there was a new king of Spain being throned, and he was 16. I think 16 is right. And they saw his paper in the newspaper. There was tons of press about it at the time. And they saw his picture, and they all decided they were going to marry him. So I think they had just decided that he could pick from the three of them who he would marry. And they wrote a letter to him, and they sent it. Or it gets sent to him. And it's just really fun that they just decided they knew so much that they wanted to marry him that he should have a letter sent. It's just very special and whimsical, and just a really fun element to the plot. Then also the other thing I really enjoyed in the Betsy and Tacy Go Over the Big Hill is there's a school entertainment. So kind of a variety show or a talent show. And Betsy's older sister, Julia, does a piano piece, and Tacy's older sister, Katie, recites the Gettysburg Address, and Tib does what's called the baby dance, and Tib's known as being very petite, so I think this is very fitting for her. And then Betsy and Tacy together do what they call the cat duet, which is where a song plays on the piano and they meow very loudly and enthusiastically throughout the course of the song in their cat costumes that they are wearing. And this is a tradition that they keep and continue throughout the rest of their school career. So I think that's just really fun for friends to have traditions like that, even if they're very silly. It's very fun. So I enjoyed that element of the plot. Then in Betsy and Tacy Go Downtown, there was a lot that I really liked in that, a lot I wanted to highlight. And the first is just the love of story in this. I mean, the book opens up with Tacy being just beside herself. She's so upset because she had borrowed a copy of Lady Audley's Secret from Betsy's maid, Rena. And when her father found it, he didn't know it was a borrowed copy, and he just tossed it into the fire because it would have been considered trash fiction. And so the girls are just they're very, what do I want to say? Just totally fixated on anything that's, you know, sensational or kind of sweeps them away, takes them away from the everyday. So they've kind of moved from having this kind of sense of imagination and where they do imaginary play to kind of this sense of being taken away by stories. And then later, shortly, you know, earlier in the book, the play Uncle Tom's Cabin comes to Deep Valley, which is the community that they live in. And they are just so interested in this play, and they are really trying everything they can to get to go to the play. And then later on in the story, Rip Van Winkle comes to, the play comes to town, and the whole community is kind of swept up by this. So I think it's really neat to see this really small community that has still these bits of culture that are coming in. And I think my favorite element from this is the fact that a library is built. It's mentioned briefly too. It's a Carnegie library. And I remember when I used to live in Pittsburgh, which is where Andrew Carnegie was from, it was mentioned a lot. You know, I kind of knew, I heard the name there. I don't know if I would have heard it otherwise, but I just wish maybe he was talked about more, because he was this wealthy man who was such a philanthropist. And I know just from passing comments that I hear from people, I think people are, just the general population can be really cynical about people having lots of wealth and only think about the negatives, but then don't think about people like Andrew Carnegie, or where I live in the Philadelphia area, a little bit towards Delaware, was the DuPont family, and they opened a children's hospital and did a lot of other things. So it's really neat to see when philanthropists do really great things with the wealth that they've acquired. So anyhow, Andrew Carnegie, I looked him up because I knew that he had offered to a lot of communities, if the community would fill the library with books, he would build a library for them. And I found out he funded 2,509 libraries being built. Isn't that amazing? This is like something more American book lovers should know about. That just astounds me. 2,509. So the Carnegie Library comes to town. And at the same time, Betsy has still been working on writing. She's kind of, you see a lot more in this that she really wants to be a writer when she becomes a grown-up. She really wants to do that, and it's really focused on in this. And what I thought was so spectacular is just how supportive her parents are of this. And her mom talks to her about kind of what else she can read that's left in the house. And Betsy says, well, I've read every book in the house. So I don't know how many books that the Ray family owned, but I think it's very clear that Betsy is a voracious reader. So very timely, the fact that the library has been built and is now opened, and her parents kind of have a little conference, and then they tell Betsy that every other week she is going to go to the library, and she can stay there for kind of the morning and the afternoon and take 15 cents. They'll give her 15 cents, which was enough to then go to a deli nearby and get a sandwich and a drink and a dessert. And I just thought, what a treat for a 12-year-old, going to the library for the morning and the afternoon and then having a meal. I just would have absolutely loved that. Yeah, I just thought, that's just so special that her parents wanted to invest in her. And you see with Betsy's older sister, Julia, with her voice skills, that they really want to foster that. And so they have Julia getting voice lessons, and I just really love Betsy's parents. And it's clear in these books also how much Betsy's father jokes around a lot and is just a really lighthearted, joyful presence to have in the household. So I think Maud Hart Lovelace, who wrote these, had a very happy childhood with just a family that really loved her. Yeah, I think Mr. Ray, everything that's said about him, he's just supposed to be very funny and he jokes around a lot. And kind of as a gag gift at Christmas, Rena the maid gives him these burned cookies. And then kind of to turn the joke around on its head, he starts eating the cookies and acting like he thinks he's supposed to eat the burned cookies, but is kind of suffering through them. And it said that, you know, Rena was crying. She was laughing so hard. Yeah, so I just love the Ray family. They're so special. And let's see, did I forget anything? Oh, yes. So through Betsy's going to the library, on one of those occasions, she ends up running into this woman who lives in, I can't remember the name of the hotel, but it's a really nice hotel downtown, and it started to snow, and so Betsy's feet are just like soaked, and her stockings are soaked, and so this lady whose name is Mrs. Poppy says, "Why don't you come to my place? I'll let your father know that you're there. You can, we can dry off your stockings and your shoes, and you can visit with me." And it just ends up being this really special relationship. And Betsy finds out really early on when she sees a picture of a little girl in a photograph that Mrs. Poppy's daughter, when she was little, had died. And she figures out, you know, here's this lady who has all of this money and has every creature comfort you could want. And she's lonely. She's incredibly lonely. So then you see kind of Betsy, and then Tacy and Tib, and then their friend Winona, who you meet in this book. Their friendship grow with Mrs. Poppy. And I just think that's a really special element. And I feel that in today's day and age, we kind of have this idea that you should only be friends with people who are your precise age. And I think it's, you know, very much the opposite. There's so much to be gained from multi-generational friendships, and that's just something that I would love to you know, foster that, friendships with people that are younger than me and older than me, and it's just a really special part of the plot. Yes, so I think I've gushed about these two books enough. Please discuss in the comments your thoughts on them, and I would love to hear from you. I really hope you're enjoying this read along. I am so much, immensely, and I look forward to discussing the high school books with you now, and I will be back next month on the 25th for another video. Bye guys.